Remember the days when a single person could make millions with their mobile app? Good news, those days are now back. Today we're going to talk about a topic that is very close to my heart, and it's how a solo app developer can actually be successful and make millions on the App Store. When I was starting out, there weren't too many success stories. This was all the way back in 2015, almost 10 years ago. So there weren't too many success stories, but one of the success stories was a guy called Alan Wong. Now, Alan Wong developed by himself an app called 50 Radio. And 50 Radio was just an app that you could use to listen in on publicly available radio stations. And I don't mean music, I mean police, fire brigade, hospitals, and things like that. With this app, he was able to make a lot of money, a huge fortune, and he was able to retire early. This was my inspiration when I was starting out. Obviously, as I've said before in other videos, my main goal when I was starting to develop apps was to make money. When you're just starting out, I'm guessing some of you guys that are watching this are in this position right now. I was facing multiple challenges. So I didn't know how to code. I didn't know how to design an app. I didn't know how to publish an app. There was no ChatGPT. It was basically 10 years ago. So information on the internet was more or less limited compared to what it is in 2024. And this guy, Alan Wong, was one of the few people that was sharing their success with their app in the App Store. And he even made some YouTube videos. He even made a book that was following his journey and his success in the App Store. So yeah, this guy was a big inspiration for me. However, after this initial phase, 2015, 2016, what happened was that solo app developers could not make it in the App Store as easily as they could in the very beginning. But before we get into the next phase of those developments in the App Store, let's just give out a few more examples of developers that made it big in the App Store. So we have solo developers like Ethan Nicholas, who developed an app called iShoot. He's a prime example because he developed the app in just 6 weeks. Look at my notes here on my computer. And he ended up grossing over $600,000 in his first month. Another early success story is Joel Combs. Sorry about the name. The app was called iFart Mobile. You probably can imagine what the app did. It was obviously a very simple and silly concept, but it was a massive hit. In just 2 weeks, it became the #1 app in the App Store, generating $10,000 per day. And another notable example is Steve Demeter's app called Trism. He earned $250,000 with this app in just 2 months. As you can see, there were a lot of examples. Not all of them were as public as Alan Wong, whom we discussed in the beginning, but nonetheless, it all seemed possible. In the next phase of the App Store, of course, with these solo developers having their success with their apps, this started attracting the attention of the big players. Soon we started seeing apps like Instagram, Uber, Snapchat, basically overtaking the App Store. And at the time I remember thinking, and I'm sure that there are a lot of people like me that were thinking, maybe it's over for this phase of the App Store. Now it's all gonna be just these huge companies with hundreds of people in their development teams, some of them thousands of people. It's going to become harder and harder to compete with these basically corporations as a solo developer. And for a certain period of time, it was exactly that. It was harder to compete whenever these apps saw some potential in a specific niche. They would start to pursue it right away. And there was also another unpleasant situation where even if you had a simple app, which was very popular, some of the big guys could copy your functionality into their bigger application or just develop a better app. It happened multiple times. Even Apple is guilty of copying functionality from their own developers and releasing their own stock apps, which become the de facto standard. So it was just this discouraging period for app developers, specifically the smaller ones like myself at the time. Thankfully, I didn't give up. I kept developing apps Even though maybe all of my friends, everybody I knew was telling me, what do you mean you started developing apps? Isn't it too late? Isn't the App Store already saturated? Isn't it basically flooded with apps from these big companies and things like that? And in my head, it kind of looked like what they were saying was not clicking with me entirely. I still felt like there's a lot of potential for smaller apps and niche apps even at that time. And that's actually the type of app that I started developing when I was starting out. And fast forward to today, we're now in 2024. We have just insane tools on the market that make it easier for people that are just starting out or even for seasoned developers to develop an app and make money on the App Store. So I think in 2023, the App Store was about 210 billion US dollars of revenue for app developers. And it keeps growing every year. And obviously, I was right about the fact that the App Store is not bad and making apps is not a bad idea. And also, the big companies, let's say Uber, let's say Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, all of these big companies, they distribute their apps through the App Store, but they're not generating revenue through the App Store. Meaning the market for apps is actually a lot bigger if you consider the fact that all of these big companies don't even move their revenue through the App Store in-app purchase mechanism. And I have a few examples of small apps that are now starting to emerge in this new phase of what I want to call the renaissance of the solo app developer. Christian Selick, with his app Apollo for Reddit, the most popular client for Reddit, he's become hugely popular, and his app is more popular than the standard Reddit app for hardcore users of the Reddit platform. And he's been able to compete with basically the Reddit app and other Reddit clients, which have been developed by huge teams with hundreds of engineers, designers, and other parts of a product company. Another recent success story is Josh Wardle's Wordle. This web-based word game basically took the world by storm before he sold it for a big number of money. And it just proves that it's still possible to make it as a solo app developer, despite the fact that the App Store is really flooded with all kinds of apps. The way to do it is to focus on a high quality user interface, solving a real world problem that people actually have, and finding a small enough niche, which even if there's other players in that niche, I promise you it's not filled in. It's better to find a small niche because you can make a good amount of money from a small number of subscribers instead of going for the big markets where obviously those big players are going to be likely taking over very soon if they haven't already. Finding ourselves in this exciting time, there's a bunch of examples where solo app developer or a very small team is generating a lot of revenue in 2024. So it's not just these examples that we had in the past. From my perspective, the question is how can we take advantage of that? Because I think right now, almost anyone can develop an app with very limited knowledge of coding, app development, and things like that, because there's so much tooling available that it's seeming more and more easy to get into the game. There's examples like Flutter Flow. Flutter Flow is a platform for developing apps with Flutter. It's a web-based platform. It's basically something like a drag and drop website builder where you can build your app. You can have your serverless backend built there as well. You can have your database. You can have your authentication. You can have your push notifications. You can even use an integration with CodeMagic to publish the app to the App Store and the Play Store by developing it with Flutter Flow. Meaning you can get away with writing minimal amounts of code. Even you could get away with writing zero code by using a platform like Flutter Flow. Now, this video is not an ad for Flutter Flow. I'm just giving an example of how you can develop an app with very minimal knowledge of app development in general. Before, you had to know how to develop the app, you had to know how to write code specific to the platform that you're building for. Let's say you wanted an iOS app, you had to know how to write code for iOS devices. Android devices use a different language, different development environment, different everything. Everything was different. So you basically had to learn two technologies at the same time if you wanted to build apps for both platforms. You had to know how to create an account for the App Store. You had to know how to create an account for the Google Play Store. It was a lot harder. It wasn't as streamlined as it is nowadays. How do we start and how do we take advantage of this exciting time that we're now in? Obviously, the first step is to build the app. And it's very important to build the app with a minimal budget. Now, don't make the mistake that I did. You could watch in a video that's going to show up somewhere here, if I get the direction proper, where I spent a huge amount of time and too much money to develop an app that no one actually wanted. So focus on developing an app, sticking to a very minimal budget. Even if you outsource everything, you can develop an app for about $4,000 to $5,000 US. And maybe this sounds a lot for some of you guys out there, but let me tell you, it's not. Like, a good website nowadays developed by a respectable web development agency could cost you somewhere around that. So developing a custom app and publishing it to the App Store for that budget is actually very minimal. So focus on trying to develop your app and stick to that limited budget. We call that an MVP, meaning a minimal viable product, which means you have your app idea and you publish the minimal version of it that allows you to validate your product with the market. The next very important thing to consider when starting your app development journey is to focus on finding a specific niche. Let's say you're excited about fitness and tracking your fitness goals or tracking your exercises. It might sound like you've already niched down, but it's actually a very broad niche. So fitness in general is a very broad niche. Try to niche down as much as possible. Let's say develop an app focused or targeted towards people that are recovering from some kind of injury, for example. Or a fitness app for pregnant women is a great thing to start with. You can tailor the exercises in the app specifically to that group of people, to that target audience, as we call it. And it's just very easy to market. You know who your customer is. You can develop your marketing strategy properly. It's just much easier to validate and potentially build the app that these users are looking for. Of course, later you can expand your niche, but this comes later. First of all, focus on your target audience, find a specific target audience, and build an app specifically for them. All these great examples that we're giving in this video and all the great examples you can find online, all of them have focused on a very specific niche and developed their app for that niche initially. And we already mentioned the importance of marketing your app, even for your MVP. Don't expect that you're going to be publishing your app and all of a sudden your users are going to start flowing, people are going to start downloading the app, people are going to start giving you money for your subscription that you have in your app. It doesn't work that way. You need some kind of marketing, you need some kind of distribution for your app. And this is something that I've been guilty of multiple times. So almost all of the apps that I've worked on, I've always focused on the product, on the development, on the tech. And I keep forgetting to focus on the marketing as well, because at the end of the day, as we discussed in one of my other previous videos, even if you develop a great app, if no one knows about it, it's still, I think, waste of time. Now, two more tactical things to consider. First of all, is learn how to use the modern AI tools that are on the market and use them effectively on a daily basis. If you don't, you're just missing out, because with a simple prompt, you can create the design for your app. You can use a tool that can make code or write code from your app design. The only thing that's left is for you to know how to run the code, compile the app, and prepare it for the App Store. So if you already know a little bit about AI and coding, it's very important to use these tools to speed up your process. Now, if you're just starting out and you're a beginner, you can still use the AI tools that are available in the market. You can even use their free versions of ChatGPT. ChatGPT 4 is now available to the public for free. You can use these tools to speed up the process of learning how to write the code of your app, if that's the route that you've chosen to go. But if you already know how to code a little bit, make sure to make yourself aware of all these tools that are out there and start using them on a regular basis. Now, don't imagine that you can sit somewhere, write a simple prompt, and you can somehow, after some magic happens in the back end of a server farm, you can somehow get an app that is ready to publish in the App Store. We're still not there, and to be honest, I don't think we're gonna get there very soon. You can use AI to speed up your development process. You can use AI to improve your development process, but you can't use AI to completely replace developers, at least yet. And the last thing I want to mention in this section of the video, where we talk about how to actually take advantage of this opportunity, is another very important aspect that I used to forget when I was starting out. And it is, don't burn yourself out. First of all, split the big project into smaller chunks and don't try to tackle the whole thing at once. There's this famous saying, I'm sorry about the metaphor, I don't like it, but you get the idea. Anyone can eat a whole elephant if they do it bite by bite. So start with small steps and you can basically finish the big project in a very manageable amount of time if you don't focus on the big picture, you don't get overwhelmed, and you don't burn yourself out. Because a lot of developers, when we're starting out, because we're seeing the opportunity, we want to get there, we want to see if this is actually the thing that's going to make it happen for us, so we push ourselves a little bit too hard. Also, consider using tools for effective time management and project management. There's a lot of free tools out there. Trello, Asana, just use these tools to keep everything in one place, stay organized, split the project in smaller chunks, and you'll get there before you know it. Now, to further inspire you, I want to share some more examples I have prepared here for successful apps developed by solo developers. These are more recent examples, so these are probably apps that you've heard of. Maybe the ones that I mentioned in the beginning are apps that you haven't heard of. We start with Angelo Coppola's app called Plant Nanny. This is a great example how a sole developer can create an app that makes a real difference in people's lives. And the app basically is gamifying the process of staying hydrated as a human. It's called Plant Nanny, so it's a wordplay because it's not related to plants. Another incredible sole app success story is the famous Flappy Bird by Dong Nguyen. Now, this simple but very addictive game took the world by storm in 2014, so maybe not as recent, but still, it was earning Dong over $50,000 per day at its peak. Now, Dong ultimately removed the app from the App Store because it was too addictive, people were getting hooked to it, but it still remains a testament of the power of a solo app developer. And finally, let's talk about an app called Undertale by Toby Fox. This is not a mobile app, it's an indie role-playing game, which is a shining example of a sole developer's success. Toby created the game entirely by himself, from the artwork, to the music, to the programming, and upon release, Undertale was met with tremendous accolades and has since sold over 3 million copies. It's a reminder that sole developers can still make it big in 2024. As we've seen throughout the video, the dream of making it big as a solo app developer is still very much possible and very much alive, and even more so than it was in the past couple of years. With the right idea, execution, marketing, and research, I think anyone can make it in the App Store and develop the app of their dreams, have financial success, and everything that you're dreaming of is very much possible. And I truly believe that there hasn't been a better time to become a solo app developer. With all the knowledge and information that's available, with all the free AI tools that you can use to speed up your process and make your app better, it's just a no-brainer. So if you're thinking about starting out as an app developer, now is the time. Just remember, success won't happen overnight. It probably won't happen from your first try. So just keep pushing through, and I'm sure you'll make it big before you know it. So if you found this video valuable, please make sure to share it, like it, subscribe to the channel if that's something you're into. I'd love to hear more about your own app ideas, about your own app development journey. So make sure to share more about that in the comment section of this video. Now, in the description, I'm going to leave links to various resources that you can use to speed up your app development process. You can also subscribe to my newly released newsletter, where we look at different aspects of app development, making money with apps, basically more details of everything that we talk about in this YouTube series. As always, guys, thank you for paying attention, and see you in the next video.